Good morning, good morning. Oh, God, I don't know what happened to my voice then. I'll start again. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to today's Morning Blast with myself and Mr. Michael Brown, where, as usual, we will discuss what happened yesterday in markets, what's going to happen today. Hopefully add a bit of value, probably a bit of swearing. It's more pub side or bar side than fireside is what I would say. Your very own macroeconomic Bert and Ernie, some other people would say if they're being unkind, but there we go. Before we get underway, I will get the legals out the way. Nothing discussed in the space of this session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ. Myself, Ryan Pays, you're indeed Mr. Michael Brown. How are you, my dear friend?
Very good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. To be honest, I'll take the Bert and Ernie comparison. Our very good mutual friend Harry Daniels at Live School likened myself and our other mutual friend Ryan Littlestone to Hinge and Bracket the other day. So I'm moving up in the world, it seems.
I can see that. No, I like that. I suppose, yeah, yeah.
Just don't tell me who's who.
I think we were all a bit just jealous of you being on the seaside.
Yeah, well, I must admit I am slightly paying for that. It was a little bit sunnier than I expected. My nose is rather Rudolph-esque at the moment.
And your Barnet because it's not like you haven't got much natural protection up there, have you?
No, but I had my freebie Aston Martin Aramco Formula One racing team baseball cap on from Silverstone to
See,
protect me.
nice plug. I was expecting a knotted handkerchief, to be honest, but there we go.
Well, a
Um,
green one, naturally, to stick with the
yeah,
vibe.
absolutely, absolutely. Right, enough about our weekends and you getting sunburned. What's been going on in markets, my dear
Well,
friend?
you did say bar side, so I thought I'd
Well,
just
no,
sort of
this is it.
take that to the max. But you're absolutely right. We probably should crack on because it was a bit of a weird one yesterday when I stood here sort of 24 hours ago, and we were talking about how markets were starting the week on a positive tone, and of course reacting to the good news of a US-EU trade deal having been agreed over the weekend. That sort of positivity really just ebbed and faded away as the day progressed. Very much a kind of buy the rumour, sell the fact reaction, in all honesty, in both the equity and the FX space. In the equity complex, we saw the S&P 500 end the day pretty much unchanged. The Nasdaq 100 advancing by 0.4%, although both of those were still some way off the intraday highs that we saw. Here in Europe, we actually saw most of the major bourses close in the red yesterday, pairing some fairly chunky opening gains. We are seeing sentiment recover a little bit this morning, but the same cannot be said for the foreign exchange complex, where the dollar really seems to have found its feet once more. The dollar index up by a whole 1% yesterday, trading to 98.60 and extending on those gains this morning as the dollar index, as I speak, tries to break north of the 99 figure. Unsurprisingly, given the sort of buy the rumour, sell the fact vibe that we have been seeing, the majority of those gains have been coming against the euro, which over the last 24 hours or so has given up both the 117 and the 116 figures and now looks perilously close towards a test of 115 to the downside as the day progresses. But the dollar gains were relatively broad-based, with cable trading back under 134 and dollar yen trading towards the 149 figure as well. Also of note in terms of that dollar move, frequent listeners will know that neither Ryan nor I go a bundle on technical analysis. One thing we do look at is moving averages. And yesterday saw the dollar index close above its 50-day moving average for the first time since February, which is noteworthy. And this morning we see the euro trading beneath its 50-day moving average for the first time since March, and cable trading beneath its 100-day moving average for the first time since February. So it just feels a little bit like the tide is starting to turn back in the dollar's favour. Nothing really to sort of write home about the US economy. It just feels as if the market has basically ran out of reasons to be short the dollar for the time being, which is probably
And just be
fueling this
fair,
rebound.
yeah, and let's be fair, it has been like the dollar has been under some severe pressure for quite some time. So,
Mm.
yeah, you kind of you wouldn't begrudge it a bit of a relief rally or at least some firming up.
No, I mean, as of Friday, the dollar index was down as near as makes no difference, 10% on the year before we've had this sort of mini rebound in 7 months. And for those unfamiliar with the FX space, I know the S&P will do 7% in a week if something happens. 10% in 7 months in the FX space is a pretty chunky move, in all
Yeah,
honesty.
especially for the nature of the move. It wasn't just like a spike and then
No,
whatever. It was like
sort
it
of
was a
grind
grind.
lower. Yeah, exactly
Yeah,
that.
we love a
Exactly
good
that.
grind.
Oh God, moving very swiftly on from that, onto the issue of trade. Of course, we had further sort of reaction and fallout to the US-EU trade deal yesterday, as Ryan alluded to actually on this call yesterday. Various folk in Europe, mainly in France and Germany, don't appear particularly content with the deal that has been agreed. It does look like there's a little bit of disharmony within the Eurozone on that front. Speaking of the European Union, though, EU officials yesterday saying that the EU have agreed to cut their import duty on autos to 2.5% as part of the trade deal that's been agreed. These officials also noting that discussions regarding wine and spirits are still ongoing, and that discussions on spirits are apparently more advanced than those on wine. So maybe Howard Lutnick, who runs the Commerce Department, is more a fan of French brandy than he is of champagne. We also heard from Politico yesterday, citing EU officials. Of course, one of the things that Trump was touting in this trade deal is the $600 billion worth of investments that are supposed to be coming from Europe into the United States. Well, about 12 hours after Trump was sort of ranting and raving and saying how brilliant that was, EU officials have turned around and gone, well, actually, there's no way we can guarantee that figure because it's all coming from the private sector. And of course, Brussels have absolutely no authority over what the private sector want to do with their money. So although $600 billion has been pledged, again, as with those sort of purchase commitments that we've seen in the past, it may be the case that actually it ends up, the actual investment figure ends up considerably
Well,
lower than that.
so I've just pinned my tweet up in the top, which I posted last night. It's the more we the more we kind of look into this, the more it's obvious that the VDL, von der Leyen, obviously, and the EU have played this. Think of it in terms of poker. They played a poor hand incredibly badly because, not only is it a shit deal, not only are French and German governments and trade bodies up in arms about it, saying, "What the fuck have you done? You've just bent over and taken a long one off of Donald
Oh
Trump,
no.
with no spittle." But also these promises that she's made in terms of purchases and investments, there's not a chance in hell that they can be achieved. Now, we know the enforcement of these is less so, especially with Trump. He just wants the headline to say that that's what they are going to do, like he's hoping that no one will actually go and check if that's what they have done. But, I think if anyone like takes a step back on this, it's an awful deal that can't be that can't be matched from the EU side. Now, are Germany and France going to lie over, bend over as VDL has done to take this? I really don't see that happening. We've already seen the overtures from both countries, from policymakers from both countries, kind of really starting to push back already. And we love a good pushback story on this show. God, there's a lot of smut on what I'm saying now. But anyway, what I'm saying is I think there's going to be a very, very severe unraveling of this if it is my buck on the line, because obviously nothing's signed yet anyway. It's just an advanced framework, as all these things are. I think there's still going to be a lot of twists and turns left in this story, because I would be shocked if this comes away cleanly.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I think you could probably level that at any of these quote unquote deals that have been done. I mean, it's the same thing with Japan, all the investment that's been proposed there. It looks like
Well,
the Japanese are
the
really turning
two.
around and going, what the fuck are you on about?
Yeah, but at least you haven't got huge areas within Japan saying this is shit.
Well, yeah,
We
true.
don't
It's
want
only
it.
one country, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difference. Anyway, we will see how all of that shakes out in the coming days and weeks. There are
Shake it
other
off.
issues on the trade front to consider this morning. Of course, US-China talks continuing in Stockholm. They wrapped up last night around about 8 o'clock in the evening local time. They are due to resume today. Neither side coming out of those talks made any remarks to reporters after they concluded, although the expectation is very much that they wrap up with an agreement of a further extension to the current trade truce. Nevertheless, President Trump has been speaking about China. He said yesterday to the press that he would love to see China open up to trade. He then went on a bit of a rant on Truth Social yesterday. Well, actually this morning. He's in Aberdeen and he was awake at 3:45 in the morning, up even earlier than I was this morning. So not sure what's going on there. He said, and I'm just going to quote here, "The fake news is reporting that I am seeking a, quote, summit with President Xi of China. This is not correct. I am not seeking anything. I may go to China, but it would only be at the invitation of President Xi, which has been extended. Otherwise, no interest. Thank you for your attention to this matter." I'm not entirely sure what to make of that at all, to be honest. Some people are saying that maybe Xi has actually invited him to a summit. If that is the case, then you would expect that to be at least mentioned in the readout from these talks going on in Sweden today. It could also just be Trump having a bit of a rant, getting up in the middle of the night and getting out the wrong side of bed.
To be fair, it's very similar to what's happened with Turnberry. That was billed as completely just him on his own. Like, he's not going to be seeing anyone when he first announced it. It's not going to be political. It's just going to be him playing golf. But he's in the area should anyone want to come and talk to him. And then also it turns into a UK kind of summit and a EU trade deal. So
It's a bit like you on a Friday. I'm going to have a quiet pint, but here I am if anyone fancies me.
Exactly. And everyone turns up. Exactly like that. You said it.
And pays your bill.
Well, not all the time, unfortunately. But it seems like that's what he's kind of playing at here. It's kind of keeping the door open so that if nothing does come of it, he can say, well, look, I was only in China just on a little visit. But, it gives him the option, and a free option to then announce some significant trade deal. So I think he's just trying to play it that he won't look like a complete twat if he does come away from these things without any deals.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, he does that anyway before any deals are even on the table. Speaking of golf, if anyone hasn't seen it, I put a video up on Sunday, I think it was. I mean, we knew Trump cheated at golf anyway, but there's a video doing the rounds of Trump's caddy walking ahead of him. He's emerged basically out of the hedge where Trump has clearly hit his tee shot. The caddy just walks to the side of the fairway, dropped the ball, which Trump then miraculously plays. Now, if anyone has ever played golf before, you will know that is certainly not the etiquette or the laws of the game. But frankly, it rather sums Donald Trump up as a person, I think. Anyway, moving on from Trump's made-up handicap, he was also talking about tariffs on the rest of the world yesterday. He said the US will set essentially a tariff for the rest of the world, and that could be in a range of between 15 and 20%. Of course, this comes ahead of the supposed tariff deadline on Friday, the 1st of August, where tariff levels may go to what they were outlined in those letters at the start of July. They may go to something else. We don't really know at this moment in time, or that deadline may be extended entirely. We really are unsure as to what's going on that front. And as if to epitomise that uncertainty, the US Trade Representative Jameson Greer said yesterday that President Trump is looking for good deals, not quick deals, when asked about that 1st of August deadline. And that, of course, very much echoes what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was saying last week, in that they are focused on high quality deals as opposed to getting a certain quantity of deals over the line. So perhaps teeing us up for another taco moment there. In terms of other bits and bobs from yesterday, just a few words on the Treasury complex. First of all, if Zach Eisman's listening, he's going to get all excited about this now. We had a 2-year sale yesterday that stopped through the rent when issued by 0.5 basis points, being taken down pretty well. We had a 5-year sale that was ugly, however, which tailed the when issued by 0.8 basis points, which is a little bit concerning given that supply in the belly has been relatively well absorbed of late, and that does tee us up potentially for a weaker 7-year sale later on today. We also had the Treasury providing their financing estimate as part of the quarterly refunding process last night. The Treasury boosting their Q3 borrowing estimate to 1.01 trillion, well above the estimate of 554 billion that they had previously outlined, before all the usual suspects start saying that, this is the end of the world and you need to get yourself in a bunker and hide out with a load of spam. That is something that really is as a result of a lower than expected cash balance. So it's not anything that's really worth worrying about too significantly. The Treasury also saying that they see Q4 borrowing at around $590 billion. For those unfamiliar with the refunding process, the way it works is that we get the financing estimate on the Monday, as we got yesterday, and then the issuance breakdown, i.e. how the Treasury are actually going to borrow that across the curve, that will come tomorrow lunchtime. So that is going to be much more closely watched, given Scott Bessant's chatter around potentially shifting much closer to T-bill issuance. In terms of other headlines from yesterday, just a few bits and bobs to rattle off relatively quickly. Wall Street Journal reporting, citing sources, that the Trump administration are weighing changes to the patent system in the United States in order to try and raise greater revenue. They may be charging patent holders between 1 and 5% of the patent value as opposed to the present system. And obviously that's as the US continue to try and balance the books. Over in Asia, Thailand and Cambodia, they have agreed to an immediate ceasefire after talks. Of course, President Trump claiming credit for that one. He is absolutely desperate for that Nobel Peace Prize. So whether he gets that or not remains to be seen. Sticking in Asia, China, they are going to give an annual subsidy of 3,600 yuan to families per child for each child under the age of 3. Of course, China have a whole host of demographic problems at this moment in time, so trying to resolve that through a little bit of bribery, although 3,600 yuan amounts to less than $500 a year, so not sure it's going to make too much difference in the grand scheme of things. Here in Europe, one last headline out of Asia. There was this senior level leadership meeting, the LDP party in Japan yesterday. Many of those present, according to sources cited by Kyodo, were calling for the Prime Minister Ishiba to resign. Ishiba has turned around and said, no, my stance remains intact. I'm going to carry on as Prime Minister. For anyone who follows UK politics closely, I'm getting horrible flashbacks to Theresa May in 2018 here, where she's not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. You know, nothing's changed. I'm going to carry on. And then eventually she did leave, and I think that will be the same with Ishiba. I think he's a bit of a dead man walking, to coin an unfortunate phrase there. Here, well, he's not actually dead. He metaphorically dead.
Zombies in Japan. You've heard it here first.
Yeah, running the country. Probably do a better job than Keir Starmer. Can we borrow him? Speaking of the UK, we heard from the FT yesterday, noting that Wise, or TransferWise as they once were, their shareholders have backed a plan to move their primary listing over to the US from the UK. This is something that actually the founder of the firm was trying to put up a bit of sort of rearguard action to stop that from happening. That has failed, and it looks like TransferWise, or Wise again, will be leaving the LSE, another departure from the London market. Over in Europe, the German government, they're going to invest 126 billion euros in defence, according to the 2026 draft budget proposals. The German government also saying that the economy should noticeably improve in this fiscal year compared with prior forecasts of stagnation. Well, I certainly won't be holding my breath for that to happen. Sticking in Frankfurt, the ECB, all is not well over at good ship ECB. Apparently the staff there, this is according to the FT, have accused President Lagarde of running, quote, an unaccountable legal fortress. So good to see that staff morale is improving over in Europe. And last but by no means least, some news regarding the Morning Blast's favourite stock, Pony AI. They have received a permit. They've received a permit to provide driverless robo-taxis in Shanghai. These taxis will be deployed in the Shanghai Pudong new area. So good for them.
Yeah, exactly that. Big up the pony. Thank you for that, Mr. Michael Brown. Let me just read off.
Well, hopefully that news isn't a load of old pony as well.
Well. To be honest, as we both are completely flat in that position, I couldn't give a shit. I actually hope they get slammed, because it was definitely a missed boat there.
Oh, hello. Sorry.
Go on.
Well, while I've been speaking, President Trump has also been speaking. He's talking about bearing in mind context here, he's in Aberdeen, so this makes a lot more sense. He's talking about the North Sea. He said North Sea oil is a treasure chest for the United Kingdom. The taxes are so high, however, that it makes no sense. They've essentially told drillers and oil companies that we don't want you. Incentivise the drillers fast. A vast fortune to be made for the UK and far lower energy costs for the people. Do you know what? I actually agree with him on that one. We're running round. We're
Yeah.
running around building windmills and solar farms and God knows whatever else while we've got buckloads of oil sat out there waiting to be drilled. So well said, Donald.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think he's absolutely nailed it there, to be fair. But moving on to some overnight news headlines via our good friend Zach Eisman and the Overnight News Roundup. Again, as always, do subscribe to it on Substack. Best way to keep up to date with the overnight news that moves markets. Starting off with trade and macro, US Commerce Secretary Lutnick, as we've heard just now, as it said a 90-day extension of a trade truce with China is very likely. Obviously, day two of the negotiations gets underway this morning in Stockholm. Lutnick said ahead of Trump's August 1st tariff deadline, quote, he's going to consider a few deals. Of course he will. But basically what he's going to do is he's going to set the tariff rate for everyone and do that by the end of the week. Unquote. Okay, so there's something to look forward to there. China's trade had its worst week in almost 3 months, a sign that this year's record-breaking volumes may be starting to slow. Cargo throughput at the nation's ports was 6.2 million containers last week, the lowest since May and down 7% from the prior week. Moving across to Taiwan, Taiwan's president appeared to call off an overseas trip planned for next week after the Trump administration failed to greenlight his US stopover amid concerns it could derail trade talks with China. This is quite significant news because Taiwan's president always seems to do a tour of Latin America, South America, but he's really doing it for a chance to stop over in a US airport where he coincidentally bumps into a lot of senators, etc. That's kind of something that the US put up with. China absolutely fucking hate it, but it's just one of those things. So the fact that Trump, and I think this is the first time I can remember that a president has actually banned the Taiwanese president from doing so. I believe it's kind of quite significant. It will ruffle a few feathers in Washington, so one to keep an eye on that front. Wall Street Journal, regarding the Bank of Japan, they're saying their sources expect an unchanged rate decision this Thursday, with policymakers wanting to watch how developments affect China's economy before acting, while inflation projections are likely to be raised. Not just on the trade front, I think, as Michael said before about the political uncertainty, I think it makes sense for the BOJ to stand pat for now. Sticking with Japan, Japan's 2-year government bond auction Tuesday drew the strongest demand since October as investors sought yields near the highest since 2008. Chinese households became more pessimistic last quarter, with the PBOC survey showing the worst ever jobs market sentiment and a negative outlook for income and prices. Moving to the UK, British shop prices rose for the most in over a year in the 12 months to July, with stronger food prices with stronger food price growth adding to UK inflation pressures and the Bank of England's rate dilemma. Jumping back to Taiwan, Taiwan investors are shifting away from US dollar assets towards Europe following a broader global move away from the greenback. We'll see how long that lasts. Gold, apparently, according to Fidelity International, could hit $4,000 an ounce by the end of next year as the Fed cuts rates and dollar drops and central banks continue adding to holdings. China's July manufacturing PMI contracted for a 5th straight month, signalling persistent weakness in industrial output despite government stimulus. And US consumer confidence, that fell more than expected in July, hitting its lowest since November amid worries about tariffs and slower hiring. Geopolitical news. Trump administration has heard compelling proposals to shift US policy towards Myanmar in a bid to divert rare earth minerals away from China. North Korea said the relations between Kim Jong-un and Trump are, quote, not bad, but dialogue must start with recognition of North Korea as a nuclear power.
Well, that's
Ukraine's
a non-starter, isn't it?
Well, pretty much. If you're not doing it for Iran, right? Kim's got no hope. Ukraine's military said that Russian forces launched their largest missile and drone attack on port infrastructure in months, targeting Odessa and Mykolaiv. Israel's shekel that weakened after reports the government could move forward with controversial judiciary reforms despite mass protests. And equity news before I hand back to Michael. Nvidia placed orders for 300,000 H20 chipsets or H20 chipsets with TSMC amid strong Chinese demand, despite holding a stockpile of 600 to 700,000 units. Licenses from the US Commerce Department are still pending. KYEC, which is Nvidia's main chip testing partner in Taiwan, is running at
Oh,
full
of course.
capacity. Yeah, absolutely. At full capacity with Q4 testing capacity expected to double Q1 levels. Union Pacific, we heard a bit about them yesterday. The railroad giant is nearing its agreement for a stock and cash deal with Norfolk Southern Corp, another railroad giant, valued at about $320 per share, which would be the railway industry's biggest ever tie-up. Choo choo. Apple will close a retail store in China for the first time, shutting its Parkland Mall location in Dalian. That'll be on August the 9th. So obviously, if you look into this as a sign of weakening demand. Baker Hughes is nearing a $13.6 billion cash deal to buy Chart Industries, edging out Flowserve with an announcement expected in the coming days. That's according to the FT. Cadence Design, agreed to plead guilty and pay $140 million over sales of chip design products to a Chinese military university. Very naughty boys and girls. Barclays, their first half profits rose 23% on strong trading activity from Trump's trade tariffs and announced a £1 billion share buyback. So, pension funds in clover there, because obviously it's mostly them that hold those kind of stocks. AstraZeneca, they beat Q2 earning expectations on strong cancer, heart and kidney drug sales, but kept its full year forecast due to pricing and trade risks. Stellantis, the car giant, they've reinstated financial guidance, expecting sequential revenue and profit growth in the second half of the year. And HSBC, they posted a 5% drop in first half profits as higher costs and a slowdown in China weighed on performance, but announced a $2 billion share buyback. Make buybacks great again. And finally, for people like our dear friend Truman at the back, Greg's reported a 14% fall in first half profit, reflecting a previously flagged slowdown in sales growth in June, which it blamed on very high temperatures in the UK. Also, from if the videos I'm seeing are anything to go with, they've got a shitload of shoplifting in most Greg's stores. So, yeah, unfortunately, there you go. And I still have yet to step foot in a Greg's bakery or whatever you want to call them.
Well, be honest, I do rate a Greg's every now and again. Breakfast, it'll sort you out, but you haven't missed a lot.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the culinary review there.
Greg's, if you're after an advocate for your brand, go and find someone else, I would ask.
Well, don't get me wrong. If they want to pay me to do an online taste trial or something, I'm happy to.
We could do all the different pastries and bakes they do, and you could just drizzle a bit of ketchup over each one of them.
Oh, behave. Right, I'm going to cut you off. Right, move on quick before I'm sick.
For those who are unaware, Ryan has a rather irrational phobia of tomato ketchup, which
Stop talking about it. Stop, please. Just move on.
Jesus Christ. Oh dear. Right, the day ahead. Let's catch up on what's going to be going on today. At 3:00 this afternoon, we have the latest JOLTS job openings data out of the United States. Openings set to fall slightly in June, down to 7.55 million, compared to the 7.769 million that we saw in May. Easy for me to say. Do recall, of course, this is June data, so it does not at all coincide with the July jobs report that we have out on Friday. Also at 3:00 this afternoon, we have the latest consumer confidence figures from the States. The Conference Board's index, that's expected at 96, up from a prior 93. In terms of other bits and bobs today, we do have a 7-year Treasury auction at 6:00 this evening, $44 billion worth being sold off. Of course, a compressed auction schedule this week ahead of the quarterly refunding breakdown and FOMC decision tomorrow. Incidentally, of course, the FOMC will be beginning their 2-day policy meeting later on today. And lastly, on the earnings front, we are due to hear from a number of big names today before the market open. Notable reports come from the likes of United Health, PayPal, Boeing, UPS and Spotify. And then after the market close, we hear from both Visa and Starbucks, among others. And of course, as those trade talks continue in Sweden, we'll also at some point be looking out for a readout from those US-China discussions. And that is all from me this morning.
Wonderful. Well, Mr. Michael Brown, look at that. All of that chat, all of that value added, all of that banter, and we're still within time. So that's
we've done very well there.
Very well. Mr. Michael Brown, thank you as always. Absolute star and a very dear friend of mine. Thank you. I'll pretend the catch-up stuff didn't happen for my own sanity. Listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. Whatever you're up to today, stay safe, keep it tight, and we will see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Bye-bye.